People remember what you do, not what you say. This is something tried and true. Every single leader, I always ask them, what is your number one leadership, thing that you could teach me? What is either the action, what is the behavior? And all of them say consistency with showing up, even when you don't want to, no matter how big or how small. Have you ever been in a team meeting where you knew the right answer? You knew exactly what the team needed to do, but nobody was listening to you. Not because you were wrong, but because you didn't have the title. You weren't the boss, you weren't the decision maker, you're just the person who happened to be right and completely powerless to do anything about it. If that's ever frustrated you, because it's frustrated me, this episode is going to change how you think about influence, because influence doesn't have anything to do about your title. And by the end of this, you'll know exactly how to move people even when you have zero authority over them. Welcome back to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. I'm John Espinosa. For the last 20 years, I've been building teams, developing leaders across all of my organizations that I've had the opportunity to lead. And right now, I'm leading 4 of them. And one thing I can tell you from over those 2 decades of being in the trenches of the hectic hustle and bustle, the most influential people in any one of those organizations are rarely the ones with the biggest title. I had to learn this the hard way. Early in my career, I got put on a cross-functional team where I had no direct authority over anybody. And nobody reported to me, right? I couldn't assign work. I couldn't hold anybody accountable through the organizational chart. I thought I was stuck. I thought, hey, how am I supposed to get anything done if nobody has to listen to me? But I had a leader on the same team, same level as me, same lack of authority, and people, they just naturally gravitated toward her. They volunteered ideas. They followed through on her suggestions. She moved the entire project forward without a single person reporting to her, and this fascinated me. So I pulled her aside one day and I said, "How are you doing that?" She said something that I'll never forget. She said, "People don't follow titles. They follow people who make them feel heard, valued, and clear on where they're going." And that changed everything for me. Today, I'm going to give you the exact framework for building the kind of influence that you aspire to have. Whether you're a new manager without a track record, a middle manager working across departments, or a leader that's been in the role for years, but still struggling to achieve that buy-in, especially from people outside your direct team, here's what we're going to cover today. Just a quick pause in our episode. This might be exactly what you need to hear. If you're currently leading a team or you want to lead a team and you're spending your days putting out fires, you're not failing, you're just stuck. Because when everything feels urgent, nothing actually improves. And over time, that starts to chip away at our confidence as a leader. I've led teams under pressure for years, and firefighting isn't about effort. It's about those missing leadership systems. When expectations are clear and ownership is real, our teams, they stop reacting and they start solving problems without us. So if you're ready to lead instead of react, click on the link below, book a call, check out our consulting programs. All right, back to the episode. As always, 3 big ideas. So stick with me till the end because I provide that framework. On the very last thing, we got to set the groundwork and then get to where we can apply that framework. We're going to talk about why authority is overrated, why it's thrown out the door, the real reason why people follow some leaders and they ignore others, and it has nothing to do with our titles. Then we're going to discuss the influence without authority framework. This is an educational podcast, and I want to give you all the frameworks in my practical experience, my mistakes that I've had along the way, so you don't make those same ones. So I'm going to share 5 specific behaviors that earn you influence with anyone. This works in work, outside of work, whether you have leading a volunteer organization like I have a couple that I lead, or people are paid underneath you. It doesn't matter. Peers, senior leaders in other departments, even people who outrank you in most cases, because we got to coach up, we got to lead up in some situations. And then I'm going to leave you with an influence action plan. So let's get into why authority is overrated. And, immediately I want to talk about this authority trap. I thought this at the beginning when I first got into industry, when I got into business. I believed that once I got a title, people would automatically follow me. And then I got the title and realized they didn't change their behavior, right? And existing managers fall into a different trap. They lean on authority because it's faster. We all want to take the least path of resistance. And things like, just do it because I said so, it works in the moment, but it begins to erode trust over time. And authority, it will get you compliance, but influence gets you commitment. And commitment is what actually drives performance. So I begin to uncover why people actually follow people with influence. And it doesn't have anything to do with the reporting line. There was 3 things, and I boiled these down. From my experience, people follow others when they feel heard. You listen before you direct. People follow others when they feel valued. This looks like you acknowledge contribution and expertise. And then the third thing was, when people feel clear, that gives them a sense of direction and purpose. And that piece, those 3 things, when people feel valued, when they feel heard, and when they gain clarity on something, we can say all the things after those 3 things, and it boils down. There's plenty more, but it boils down to those 3 things. And when those 3 conditions are met, people are going to want to follow you. You don't have to force it. Leadership isn't about force. It's not about compliance. So when those conditions are missing, however, even people who report directly to you, they're only going to give you the minimum. And I'm not about the minimum. When we lead high-performance teams, which I know all of you do out there, you're taking the time to listen. You have high-performance individuals on your teams. You don't want just compliance. So when we look at the cross-functional reality, and in most of the organizations that I lead, and I'm sure similar to the ones that you lead, your success depends on other people, right? It depends on other people who don't report to you. If you're leading a volunteer organization, those people don't report to you, and the success of the organization depends on other departments, your peers, maybe senior leaders, vendors, or partners, corporate partners in one of the organizations that I have. You will spend more of your career influencing laterally and upward than you will directing downward. So leaders who master influence without authority, they're going to become the most valuable people in the building because they get things done across the boundaries. I was working with a team leader who, they had just been promoted. She reached out to me. She was super excited. She felt prepared. She walked into her first week ready to lead. And by Friday, she was frustrated. She said, I told my team what needed to happen this week. I was clear. I gave deadlines, and half of it just didn't get done. And she couldn't understand why. She said, I'm the manager now. Why aren't they listening? So I asked, I said, before you told them what to do, did you ask them anything? And there was this long pause. She had spent the whole week directing without a single question. Not a single moment of space was created for listening. So her team, they didn't feel heard. They didn't feel like they were being invested in. And when we have uninvested people, they're going to do the minimum. So the next week, she changed her approach. She started every interaction with asking good questions before telling. She would ask things like, what's on your plate, or what's getting in your way? Or more importantly, what do you think we should prioritize? And by the end of that second week, drastically changed, 180. It was the same team, the same ones that were ignoring her, the same team members that were doing the minimum. Now they began volunteering for extra work. And nothing about her title changed, nothing about her authority, but everything about her influence did. And this is based on research, some research out of the Center for Creative Leadership. And this is interesting because they found that the top predictor of leadership effectiveness, it doesn't have anything to do with our ability as leaders to make decisions or our technical knowledge. It's the ability to build and maintain relationships. It's one of my top characteristics that I look for in leaders when I'm hiring. It's that relationship management, because leaders who prioritize relational influence over positional authority, they are rated 3 times more effective by their teams and their peers. So here's the gut check. Everybody out there listening, in your last 5 interactions with your team, how many of the conversations started out with you telling versus asking? And if you're doing more directing than you are listening, then you're leaning on the authority piece, and it's going to cost you influence in the long run. So this week, I want you to flip that ratio. I want you to ask first and then direct second. And then I want you to sit back and watch what happens. It's going to transform the way that people see you. Because if authority isn't the answer, I'm probably asking yourself, what is, right? Let me give you the 5 behaviors that build real influence with anyone. And these 5 behaviors, in my experience, they're what I've seen work across every single kind of team at every level and through every situation. So they work whether you're brand new or you've been leading for 20 years. And they work whether a person reports to you or not, and even across a virtual team or an in-person team. So you're asking yourself, John, get to the point. What is it? Behavior 1, lead with curiosity. The most important thing that I can tell you, and that's why this is the number 1 behavior, I've seen leaders that lead with curiosity, it doesn't matter whether they're new or whether they've been leading for some time, they gain instant street cred. And you may be asking yourself, okay, what does that look like? Well, it looks like, as we mentioned earlier, asking questions before making statements, seeking to understand. I boil it down to being the most interested person in the conversation, not the most interesting person in the conversation. So this isn't manipulation. It's a genuine interest in somebody else's perspective, whether it's challenges that they're experiencing or their ideas. And the reason why this builds influence is because people are wired, okay? We are wired to trust people who listen to us. When we ask good questions as leaders, people are going to feel respected, and respected people give us their cooperation. Most people in organizations, I can tell you from working with many leaders out there, interviewing their employees at all levels throughout, they feel ignored. And the leaders who actually will listen, they become the leaders who they want to work with. It doesn't matter whether they report to them or not. So the key here is to ask first, then give the space to listen, and then contribute. Okay? So behavior number 2, give credit. And not just give credit where credit is due, but give it generously. Publicly acknowledging other people's contribution, especially when it would be easy to take the credit ourselves, guess what? That's not going to work. I was listening to a podcast and John Maxwell said, it's not about my success. It's not about where I'm going. It's about how I can help others get to where they're going. And that's when it boils down to helping people, that's the mantra that we as leaders live by. And the reason why, if that is your mantra, the way we're going to build influence is by building loyalty. And especially when someone doesn't report to us. We make them feel and look good in front of others. Who doesn't want to be in the spotlight, especially, or given kudos? People remember who credited them. A simple thank you note. Today, I was in a meeting and there was an individual, ran a good meeting. We talked a little bit about it. I gave him some pointers and he changed up the way that he was taking notes. But after that meeting, we were crossing each other in the hall and I simply said, "Hey, you ran a good meeting today. I'm proud of you." It may have not been a fancy public recognition, but later on during that day, as he was crossing my office going home, he said, "Hey, thanks for acknowledging me." Just that simple credit built loyalty and trust in that individual, because when we hoard credit, it builds resentment. But sharing credit builds alliances. And this is something that I learned early on in my career. Spotlighting others will turn into loyalty. And when we build loyalty, that's going to earn us. That's like depositing the trust account or depositing money in the trust accounts, and that will earn us influence. So the behavior number 3 on our list today is delivering value before you ask for anything. And as I wrote this down, this is the piece where we got to help others solve their problems before we ask them to help with ours. And we want to be the person that shows up with solutions, resources, and support without being asked. So in this situation, we build influence by that reciprocity. And this is something that I learned in sales. It's something that we learn in training. And it's something that needs to be part of our leadership philosophy, because reciprocity is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. When we help someone first, they naturally want to help you back. Most people approach cross-functional relationships, they approach them transactionally. So I need something from you before I give something to you, or I give, up something for you. And the leader who gives first, they're going to stand out immediately in those types of situations. So I want everybody to ask themselves, am I giving first, which will in turn build goodwill? And then that goodwill is going to deposit those, credits. So when I ask later, it's almost like I'm not even asking. It's that reciprocity that they're going to want to give. It's not going to be such a big hill to climb. Okay. So behavior 4. Again, these behaviors, they're in rank for a reason. So if you're wanting to practice one, which that's going to be a challenge for you, I'd start with the first one and then move down. But behavior 4 is to be relentlessly reliable. You've heard me say this before on some of my other podcasts. Do what you say you'll do every time, without exception. Follow through on those small things, because that's where trust is actually built. People remember what you do, not what you say. This is something tried and true. Every single leader, I always ask them, what is your number one leadership, thing that you could teach me? What is either the action, what is the behavior? And all of them say consistency with showing up, even when you don't want to, no matter how big or how small. And this goes back to reliability. Reliability is our currency of influence. So people follow people who they can count on. Think about this. Last time you built reliability in somebody, or somebody showed up for you all the time, no matter what, aren't you going to go to the ends of the earth to do anything for that person? Of course you are. Because this is something that I've learned being a parent. One broken promise erases maybe a whole month of reliability, right? Consistency is going to be what separates leaders from other leaders, leaders who tolerate maybe from people who trust. And this is important because when we say it, we need to be able to back that up through our behavior, and then we just need to repeat it. Okay? Don't miss 2 days in a row. It's harder to rebuild than it is to stay consistent. I promise you. I know everybody's out there like, well, John, that takes a lot of work and energy. Stay consistent. Because once you lose that, now you're in the rebuilding phase, and it's going to take you much longer. And if you really look at the whole time scale of things, I promise you that level of effort that you're going to spend in consistency is minor compared to the rebuild. So behavior number 5, and this goes back to our lead principle, alignment. Align with their priorities. Focus on framing your ideas in terms of what matters to them, not just what matters to us. So that takes an understanding of where their goals are, where their pressure points are, their metrics. And it allows us to show how we're proposing to help them win those, right? To help them achieve their goals, to help them alleviate their pressures. The number one reason why I found that leaders fail to influence laterally is they pitch their own priorities first without connecting to the other person's. And when somebody feels like, we understand their world, they're far more likely to support our ideas. This is especially critical when influencing our senior leadership. When we're leading up, they care about what moves their needle, and we need to understand that. So those 5 behaviors, we'll put them down in the chat. Lead with curiosity first. Give credit generously. Deliver value first, and then be relentlessly reliable and align with those priorities. Here, remember that those 5 things are going to help you influence better, because the leader that I mentioned earlier, the one that I watched work across that cross-functional team, she moved the whole project forward without any authority. And when I look back and I reflect on what she did using all 5 of these behaviors, she just did them naturally, but she didn't learn them overnight. Okay, she asked questions before asserting her own opinion. She credited people in their ideas publicly. She helped team members with challenges before asking for support of her own. And she always followed through. She proposed something and then she framed it around what mattered to the people in the room, not just what mattered to her. So she didn't have the title. Nobody ever gave her a title, in fact. But by the end of the project, she was the person that everyone looked to. And, I've been lucky enough to work with people and learn from them in ways that have helped me become a better leader. So if you have a mentor and a coach out there, please ask them about those 5 behaviors. Also, some research here, Harvard Business Review on lateral leadership. I was talking about earlier that professionals who consistently practice influence behaviors, so things like listening, crediting, and aligning, you're also going to get promoted faster than your peers who rely primarily on their positional authority. So this isn't just John's thoughts. There's some hard research here that's backed up by this. So I want you to look at these 5 behaviors and be honest with yourself, okay? Which one are you weakest in? Which one do you skip most often? And then that's going to be your starting point. Just pick one, okay? Shrink the start small. Make sure that you figure out what day 1 looks like, and then implement. And you're going to be amazed at what a shift you're going to see. So the third thing I want to talk about, and this is where the rubber meets the road, your influence plan. This is your action plan. And we start out most action plans with audits. Before we can build influence, we need to know where we stand. So think about 5 or 6 people within your organizations who their cooperation matters most to your success. They could be peers, it could be other department leaders, senior leaders in the organization, whatever, key team members. Those 5 to 6 people, write them down on a piece of paper. And then what you're going to ask yourself is, does that individual trust me? Do they feel heard by me? Have I delivered value to them recently? Do they see me as being reliable? And do they believe that I understand their priorities? And if your answer to most of those questions is I don't know, that's where you're going to start. Because we can't begin to build influence with people that we haven't invested in. So step 1, you're going to audit. Step 2, this is the 1 conversation per day challenge. And I do this with all of my clients. For the next 5 business days, I want you to have 1 influencing building conversation per day. These aren't going to be meetings, okay? They're separate from meetings. They're just a 5 to 10 minute check-in. It could be virtual. It could be on the phone. It could be walking, up to somebody's cube. It could be in the parking lot. All right. But I want you to keep it natural. And then you're going to use this template. So I want you to find a peer that you regularly talk to. Have a conversation with them. Then I want you to locate somebody, a team member, maybe who's been quiet for the past week. Have a conversation, the 5 to 10 minute. Also, pick someone from another department. Okay? Have that implementation, have that conversation. A senior leader in your organization, and then someone who helped you recently. So those 5 people, you are going to have an intentional, influencing, one-on-one conversation with. That's step 2. And then step 3, I'm going to give you an influence script. And this is for those tough situations. So let's give an example of someone that you need buy-in from, and maybe they don't want to listen. Some things that you might start off with is, hey, I know you're busy. I want to be respectful of your time. Can I have 3 minutes to share something that I think could help your team? Say you got a situation where you need to push back on someone and they outrank you. You could say something like, hey, I want to support this direction or the decision that you're making. Can I share a concern so we can address it before it becomes a bigger issue? It's simple, it's non-confrontational. So let's talk about a situation when you're new and nobody really knows you yet. So you walk into an organization as the newbie, maybe you're a seasoned leader, you're just crossing over to a different department. You could say something like, hey, I'm still learning how things work around here. I want to make sure that I'm adding value in the right places. What does your team most or need most right now? Those situations, I'm sure that we've all been in. And if you haven't been in it, you're going to be in it. Those are simple ways, simple examples that you can address the situation, because if you bury your head in the sand and you continue to put off those conversations, it's only going to get worse. I'm here to tell you. So let's tie this into our lead framework. So L, listen. Influencing others starts with listening. We can't move people if we don't understand what moves them first. So before every interaction, we're going to ask a question. Envision. We're going to envision the relationship that we want to build with each key person within our organization or outside of our organization, or maybe we're leading up, right? So what would that look like if they trusted you completely? Would your day be easier? Would you like your job again? And then we're going to work backward from there. The alignment piece, we're going to align our requests with their priorities every time. Every time we're going to ask for something to connect it, and then connect it with really what matters to them. And then we're going to drive the change by being the most reliable person, by being the most generous person, by being the most curious person in the room all the time. Because influence is built through consistency, not one big moment. So here's your final assignment. I want you to write down the 5 people whose cooperation matters to you the most. And if you influence those people, you will see immediate success. And then for each person, rate your relationship on a scale of 1 to 10. Anybody who you rate under 7, I want you to do the check-in conversation with them this week. No ask, no agenda, just a genuine investment. That's where influence is going to start. So let's recap what we've covered. First thing, authority gets compliance. Influence is going to get us commitment. And leaders who build real influence don't rely on their title. They are going to rely on how they show up. We talked about the 5 influence behaviors that work whether you're a new manager with no track record or a seasoned leader who's working across departments. And finally, I gave you a plan. The influence audit, where you stand, we're going to have that one-on-one conversation per day. It's going to build that momentum. And then we shared practical scripts, or I shared practical scripts around those tough situations. So here's what I want you to remember. You don't need a bigger title to have more influence in your organization. We just need to establish better habits. Every single conversation that we have is a chance for us to build trust, or it's going to erode it. Every interaction is an opportunity to show people that we hear them, we value them, and I'm somebody or you're somebody that they can count on. I promise you, if you master these things, right? If you master influence without authority, you're not going to have to wait for permission to lead. You're going to lead for anywhere in the organization that you walk into. If this episode resonated with you, if it's something that you find useful, do me a favor. Share it with somebody who's struggling to get the buy-in that they'd so desperately need. Maybe it's a new manager who feels invisible. Maybe it's a peer of yours who just keep on hitting the walls with other departments. 2, subscribe. You will do me an immense service if you subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell. This next episode, we're all going to focus on getting the most out of our leadership. And then 3rd, drop a comment below. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think of the framework. Does it work? Is it BS? I don't know. I want to know, because these episodes are centered around conversations that I have from fellow leaders like you, the coaching experience that I bring to my clients, and just things that I wonder about or wake me up at night. So again, until next time, keep leading, keep growing. I believe in you. Talk to you on the next episode. Go be great. Bye-bye.